Hello and welcome to Ask the Professor, a new feature where we answer your questions about history, economics, public affairs, culture, what have you. Without further ado, let's get started.
Right, well, you forgot to say one thing. One thing we asked our subscribers, your subscribers, was you can ask about anything, philosophy, public policy, yada, 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 anything really except why the Leafs can't win. And sure enough, one of our smart alecky subscribers asked, well, who cares why the Leafs can't win? So how about you answer that one first?
That's a splendid question. One possible answer is because I'm from Toronto and I still remember when it happened. But not everybody has that problem. The other answer is because it's an object lesson in futility. Organized, financed, persistent. It's one thing to have a bad season. It's another thing to have trouble in a small market where you can't maybe pay competitive salaries to put together a winning team. But how do you have the premier franchise in Canada, economically speaking, with a storied history? They've still won the second most Stanley Cups of any team, incredible as that might sound in the modern world. Of course, they won them all before the California Golden Seals first took to the ice, which was a while ago now. The California Golden Seals, one of the original expansion teams. They even had white skates. It was very 60s. But
and not in a good way, right?
Not in a good way. I don't know if there is a good way to be that, but if there is, they didn't find it, and they're not still around. But seriously, I mean, the Toronto Maple Leafs, they're sellout. Money pours in. The organization doesn't have to field a competitive team because the fans put up with what they're getting. And to me, there's a real lesson there. Every year, Leafs fans, I hear, I wouldn't know myself, honest, believe the team's going to win the Stanley Cup. And every year, the Leafs start out, well, sometimes they just stink right from the beginning, but other times they tease you first and then they crumble. You know, how do you do that? If we understood that, we would understand a lot more about mediocrity. And I think mediocrity is one of the big public policy problems in Canada. We settle for indifferent results far too often, and we settle for them accompanied by self-congratulatory, posturing pomposity. If we didn't do that, we'd get less of it. And I don't just mean with the Toronto Maple Leafs, although that might be a good place to start.
So are they going to win?
Oh, absolutely. The Leafs could win the Cup this year.
All right, second question. It came from another one of your subscribers who misses Sun News very much and asked, he said, I heard you one day, I'm not sure I heard this right, but I think I heard you on Sun News once, say that Thomas Jefferson was a bad guy or a tyrant or something. He wasn't too sure what word really you'd used. And he asked if you could explain that.
The word I probably used was villain, though it might also have been wretch. Hypocrite is another popular choice. I've been puzzled for years by the high place that Thomas Jefferson holds amongst America's founding fathers in the imagination of posterity and in the minds of progressives to this day. I mean, by now, it has dawned on people that a lot of American founding fathers were slave owners, and that this was a blind spot, a very major and troubling one. How could men who were, in most respects, so admirable have been so blind to this evil? Slavery, obviously, was going to go on to become a major practical problem for the United States. It would lead to the Civil War. The bitterness that came out of the Civil War scarred the nation and resulted in appalling bigotry carrying on pretty much into the present day. But it was also just a profoundly moral problem. We all think if we'd lived back then, we'd have been abolitionists. But statistically, that's not true. The vast majority of people either accepted slavery or endorsed it reluctantly. Very few people were militantly against it. But Jefferson isn't simply in the dock with a whole bunch of other people. He stands out in this regard because he was so hypocritical. In his youth, he was an abolitionist. Then he became an advocate for slavery. He wrote appalling things about blacks, about how they stank, things like that. He had a black mistress, his own wife's half-sister, apparently. He had children by Sally Hemings. Do you think he whispered that bit about how they stink in her ear in bed? It is repellent that a man could have uttered so many high-minded phrases and behaved in such a base way. Also, Jefferson was the one who did not keep his sense of balance. He was an enthusiast for the French Revolution, said the soil of liberty must be watered periodically with the blood of tyrants. He was reckless. He had no judgment. He was a spendthrift. One of the reasons he couldn't have freed his slaves even if he'd wanted to is that they were mortgaged. And in so many respects, Jefferson talked a great game, really did say some inspiring things, but his conduct fell very far below that. One more practical example, where George Washington and especially John Adams were thought by their opponents to be a little too sympathetic to Britain and too hostile to revolutionary France. And people even accused Adams of wanting to bring back the monarchy, possibly with himself as king. But Adams had a chance to get the United States into war with France in the very late 18th century, and he deliberately avoided it, even though it hurt him badly with his own party. Jefferson, on the other hand, drifted into war with Britain on behalf of Napoleonic France. Now, the war didn't actually start until Jefferson's successor was in the White House, but it's Jefferson's fault that it happened. He was a man of severely unbalanced judgment, depraved in his personal conduct, hypocritical, and a terrible example to future generations. That's why I don't like Thomas Jefferson.
Okay, wait. Now, I didn't go to history school nearly as long as you did, but I don't remember hearing any of that in school.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Jefferson, for some reason, gets whitewashed.
Why?
I think because he was on the radical left, and radical leftists like him, and they overlook his failings. But I'll give you, to me, the defining anecdote here. George Washington was not a man to talk much about his feelings or show them, but in his will, he freed his slaves, except some that had come in as part of his wife's dowry that he wasn't allowed to free. They were meant to be free on her death. She got a little tired of vultures on the bedpost, and she freed them in case they decided to hasten the blessed event with a pillow over her face or something. On the other hand, when Jefferson was an old man, a rich young Virginian named Edward Coles came to him and said, I have a proposition to make to you to do something about this scourge of slavery. I'm thinking of freeing my slaves. I'm a rich man. People will be impressed if I give it all up. But I'm just this guy. You're Thomas Jefferson. You founded the University of Virginia. You wrote the Declaration of Independence. You were President of the United States. Why don't we both do it? That'll really make an impact. And Jefferson said, no, we don't dare to. We can't. We're holding the wolf by the ears and we can't let go. You know what Coles did? Disappointed as he was, he went off and he freed his slaves anyway, took them to free soil. Later was governor of Illinois. Jefferson had this chance to really do something about slavery. Washington emancipated quietly. Jefferson could have done it spectacularly. Instead, he didn't do it at all. He failed at this last critical test in his life. And when you think of all that slavery cost the United States, you see just how horrifying it was that he couldn't find the courage and the clarity to do that, despite his reputation as a great thinker and a great man. He was, in many ways, a good thinker. And the Declaration of Independence is magnificent, but he was not a great thinker, and he was not even a good man.
Well, all right then. And folks, if you enjoyed this and you would like to ask some questions, look out just underneath the video and we'll give you the details on how to do that. Thank you.